We hear these huge climate pledges all the time, right? From countries, from big corporations. But how do we know they're actually doing what they say they are? That is the multi-trillion-dollar question. It's this gap between a promise on a piece of paper and real tangible proof. So let's get into it. Let's talk about how we're finally starting to close that gap.
And our story today starts somewhere kind of surprising. A rice paddy. I mean, think about it. Rice is what more than half the world eats every day, but it's got this massive, hidden climate footprint. So the question is, how can this simple, humble field become a key player in the fight against climate change? The answer, you'll see, is pretty fascinating.
Okay, so the big problem? It's the water. For centuries, we've grown rice in fields that are flooded all the time. Turns out, this creates the perfect oxygen-free soup for these tiny microbes that just pump out methane. And methane, wow, it's a greenhouse gas that's more than 28 times stronger than CO2. But what if we could just change the recipe? Well, it turns out we can. There are these new climate-smart techniques that can slash those emissions.
All right, to really see this in action, let's head over to India. There's this incredible project happening that is a total game changer for thousands of farmers. And it's proving something really important, that what's good for the climate can also be amazing for local communities. And yeah, for their bank accounts too.
So the technique is called alternate wetting and drying, or AWD for short. And, the science behind it is just beautiful in its simplicity. Instead of keeping the fields underwater all the time, farmers let them dry out every so often, just for a few days. And that simple act, it breaks the cycle. It lets oxygen get back into the soil, which basically starves out all those little methane-making microbes. Simple, right?
And this is where it gets really good, because it's not just about the climate. It's a total win-win-win situation. First, farmers use 15 to 30% less water. I mean, that's huge, especially in places where water is scarce. Their costs go down, and their crop yields stay the same or even get better. And here's the kicker. On top of all that, because they're cutting emissions, they can generate a whole new source of income from carbon credits. Okay, but here's the million-dollar question. A farmer in India can say, yep, I'm doing the new thing. But how does a company, say in Europe, that's buying that carbon credit really know for sure? How do you take their word for it and turn it into solid proof? How do we actually measure and verify that the climate benefit happened?
And that brings us to what I like to call the verification gauntlet. In the climate world, you'll hear this acronym all the time, MRV. It stands for measurement, reporting, and verification. But let's be honest, that V for verification, that's the whole ballgame. It's the super rigorous, independent checkup that transforms a claim into something that's actually credible, tradable, and trustworthy.
And this is what proof actually looks like. It's not some flashy press release. Nope. It's a 93-page, super dense validation report from a professional third-party auditor. It's technical, it's complicated, and it is the absolute foundation of trust for this entire project. So what's actually in a report like this? Well, think of it like a deep dive financial audit, but instead of money, they're auditing carbon. These auditors, they go through everything, every single document, every calculation. They interview the project managers. They talk to the farmers. They actually go out and do spot checks on the farms themselves. And if they find anything wrong, anything at all, it has to be fixed before the project gets the final green light. Every single detail gets checked.
Now, this incredibly thorough process is exactly why these carbon credits are worth anything. It's what builds the trust. But, and this is a big but, it's also a huge bottleneck. It's slow, it's expensive. And just think about trying to do this for the millions and millions of projects we need across the entire globe. It's not scalable.
And this is where technology steps in and completely changes the game. We are now moving into the era of what's called digital MRV. We're talking about using some seriously cutting-edge tools to do all that trust building, but to do it faster, cheaper, and way more efficiently than we ever could before.
So what is digital MRV really? Well, the World Bank has a great way of putting it. It's basically mashing up technology with environmental accountability. The best way to think about it is like a high-tech toolkit for building trust. It uses the whole shebang: AI, satellite images, smart sensors right there in the field, and it gets them all working together to automate the whole process of gathering, crunching, and verifying all that climate data. And you can really see how this works in practice right here. We've got these digital maps outlining every single farm. That data then gets plugged into a bigger mapping system. And here's the cool part.
AI can look at satellite pictures and sensor data for each one of those tiny plots and see the telltale signs of that alternate wetting and drying technique. It's literally verifying what's happening on the ground from space.
So, what are AI's superpowers in all this? Let's break it down. Power up number 1, big data analysis. An AI can chew through enormous amounts of data, from satellites, drones, sensors, you name it, way faster than any human could. It can spot patterns and check up on thousands of farms all at once.
Okay, power up number 2, data fusion. See, the AI isn't just looking at one piece of the puzzle. It's smart enough to pull together satellite images, local weather data, readings from sensors in the soil, and even the info the farmers provide themselves. It fuses it all together to create one super accurate picture of what's really going on.
And for its third trick, trend analysis. The AI can look back at years and years of data to figure out what was normal for that area before the project even started. This is so important because it lets us spot long-term changes, helps us predict what might happen next, and make sure the project's climate impact is calculated correctly and, honestly, for its entire lifespan.
And look, this isn't some far-off sci-fi concept. As experts in the field like Abhilash Shaporwar from Blue Sky Analytics are saying, it's really just about using the powerful tools we have right now to make smarter, data-driven decisions. This kind of tech is quickly becoming a must-have if we're serious about turning our big climate goals into actual reality.
Okay, so let's zoom out for a second. We've been talking about one farm in India, but how does this tech scale up? How do we go from a single field to a global system that's truly transparent? A system that can finally hold all those massive climate pledges accountable?
Well, the impact is very real, and you can put a number on it. That one rice project we've been talking about, once it's all verified, it's expected to cut emissions by almost 445,000 tons of CO2 equivalent over a decade. Just think about that. That's the power of just one verified project. Now imagine multiplying that by thousands, all powered by this technology.
So, here's the bottom line. Digital MRV is building a system that's all about transparency and accountability. It means pretty much anyone can look at the data, double-check the information, and see for themselves if the claims are real. It's creating the very foundation of trust we need for things like a global carbon market, and, maybe most importantly, for making sure companies and countries actually follow through on their promises.
When you boil it all down, it comes back to a pretty simple idea. Digital MRV is the bridge. It's the piece we've been missing. It's the tech that can finally take all those vague, someday promises and turn them into right here, right now, verifiable proof that something is actually being done.
And that really leaves us with a huge question, doesn't it? For so long, one of the biggest things holding back real climate action was this whole problem of trust and verification. But if we now have the technology to prove every single promise, to verify every ton of carbon that's reduced, well, what's stopping us from making and actually keeping the kind of bold promises our planet desperately needs?